It's week 18, which sadly means this is the final week for fantasy football this season. But the good news is you only have one more time that you have to decide who to start at tight end. We're going to go through every tight end that matters. We're going to break it down by tier because you know that the final week of the season can be a little weird. So with a lot of teams already locked into their playoff seeding and some teams likely to rest their starters, let's talk about that first. There are a couple of teams that might rest their tight end. That actually matters for fantasy. Not a whole lot for tight end, but Travis Kelce and the Chiefs, you just know he's not going to be out there. And if so, he's probably not going to do a whole lot. Why would they risk it? So if you had Travis Kelce, you're probably going to need to look elsewhere this week. And then really the only other team with a fantasy relevant tight end that might not play a whole lot is Dalton Schultz of the Texans. And Schultz really hadn't been doing a whole lot at all until the last couple of weeks because of so many injuries at receiver. But because they have so many injuries at receiver and they don't have anything to play for this week, I think Schultz is a little too risky. There are still a couple of tight ends we're going to consider must start even this week. First of all, Trey McBride. I think he's probably the only tight end that pretty much every week from the start to the end of the season has been in this tier. But yeah, there's no reason not to keep playing him. McBride a must start. Brock Bowers, you know it, even though the Raiders have never really been in playoff contention, it doesn't matter. He's just going to go continuing to establish rookie records. So we got Brock Bowers. Good on you. George Kittle, I would say, is a must start, but this one's a little tricky because even though the Niners were already eliminated before last week, Brock Purdy's dealing with some elbow issues. So I'm going to say if Purdy plays, Kittle's still a must start. If Purdy doesn't, Kittle is going to be a very risky streamer. And then welcome back to the must start tier. I'm going to put Sam Laporta back here. I mean, he's been such an integral part of this passing offense the last few weeks. Not coincidentally, since David Montgomery was injured and the Lions have been having to pass the ball more with how bad their defense has been. The last 4 weeks, he's got 22 receptions and he's averaging 8 targets per game. This is a very, very good chance for him to put up points in what is sort of a must win for the Lions for seeding. So I'm going to say if you have Laporta, lock him in. Now, these tight ends should be considered strong starts. If you don't have any of those 4 I just mentioned, you can go with these guys, no questions asked. So let's start. On Saturday, the first game is going to be the Browns and the Ravens. I'm going to say Mark Andrews should be a strong start. You know, it's sort of questionable how hard the Ravens are going to have to push this weekend to win this game, but they'll want to win. I don't think they're sitting players. Mark Andrews has been really good pretty much for the whole second half of the season. The last time they played the Browns, he did score a touchdown, only 36 yards on 5 catches. But hey, at tight end, that's actually pretty good. And so I think if Andrews is on your roster, you can start him. And then Jonnu Smith, I know some people are going to say, well, why would you doubt him? Look, before that late touchdown last week, I mean, he really had done nothing. Only wound up with 3 catches for 26 yards. And that's because Tua was out. Well, Tua should come back this week. I really hope he does because the Dolphins need to win just to keep their playoff hopes alive. And so, look, if Tua plays, Jonnu Smith is a strong start, period. This Jets defense, not scary anymore, and especially at this point in the season, they're basically packing it in. So I think if you have Jonnu, you can trust him. And look, even if Tua doesn't play, I guess at least we've seen Jonnu could score. And a guy who's really come on lately is Pat Freiermuth. Going to put him in the strong start tier as well. 7 catches for 60 yards last week. That's pretty nice for PPR. And the last time they played the Bengals, he had a very similar game, but included a touchdown. 6 catches, 68 yards, and a score. And they're playing the Bengals in a game where you know there's going to be a lot of passing on both sides. And yeah, this is a very, very generous defense. So Freiermuth should have a nice game again. And one of the tight ends you probably should feel the absolute best about. I almost want to put Zach Ertz in the must-start category. I mean, sure, he scored 2 touchdowns last week. A lot of that, you know, is kind of a byproduct of the fact that Terry McLaurin was shadowed and shut down and not even targeted. But look, yeah, 6 catches, 72 yards, 2 touchdowns. That was last week. He gets Dallas, and he scored against them the last time these two teams played. But also, you know what? Incentives are helpful when it comes to contracts here. Zach Ertz playing for those bonuses. He got some last week. He still has more to even go for this week. I think they're going to continue to feed him here. I mean, yeah, if you have Zach Ertz, you almost have to play him. I wouldn't go so far as to put him over a guy like Bowers or McBride, but other than that, he might be the strongest of the strong starts. Now in the solid start tier, Again, solid at tight end is always somewhat debatable, but I feel good enough about the target share for these players and their role here. So let's start with TJ Hockenson. Again, that's a game where both teams are going to be fighting for the top seed. Hockenson going against his former team. He didn't get to face them the last time they squared off because he wasn't back yet. But, this is not an easy matchup, even though you figure you should feel pretty good about Hawk in general. Those wide receivers have been the ones carrying the load here, but also the Lions defense, second toughest against tight ends. So it's really not a smash spot for Hawk, but he'll be involved. He'll get you at least a floor, and there's always potential for a touchdown. And then what's definitely a must-win game for the Bengals, so we have to put Mike Gesicki back into the solid tier, even with Tee Higgins playing. That's right, even with Tee Higgins going off last week, Gesicki also had a pretty nice game, 5 catches, 53 yards. Again, the Bengals are just going to go all out here. Gesicki will be a factor. It's not a terribly tough matchup for them either, at least in terms of the tight end. So I think Gesicki does at least get you that floor. And while Chig Okonkwo did not go ballistic last week, he slowed down a little bit, but he was involved, 5 catches on 7 targets. So no, he didn't wind up being a league winner in week 17. I'm not sure he'll wind up being that in week 18, but he's still getting that steady target share. It's not a tough matchup this week. Look, if you're in a full PPR league, Okonkwo is still definitely one of your better options. And then I'm actually going to put a Saints tight end here because let's face it, the way that the Saints receiving core has looked, their tight ends have become like their receivers, their main targets. They just don't have legitimate wide receivers to throw to. And it shows because Juwan Johnson was leading receiver last week, 6 catches for 66 yards. And now this week they're going to face the Bucs. There's also a rumor that Derek Carr wants to come back and play this week. I mean, I guess at this point we have to say that's an upgrade over Spencer Rattler. But look, Juwan Johnson, he's getting targeted. It's a good matchup. I think he is at least solid this week. And if you're still streaming week 18, all right, here we go. These are probably getting your best options, or at least we can't consider these guys more than just streaming options. And Kyle Pitts, yeah, I guess we at least have to keep him here. He scored last week. Guess Penix is still going to target him despite that interception he caused him in his first start. It's the Carolina Panthers. Again, this is one of the worst defenses against tight ends. I mean, we can't just completely ignore Pitts. I know you don't want to start Pitts, and I don't want to recommend Pitts, but he's at least better than some of these other options. If I have Juwan Johnson as a solid start, I got to put Foster Moreau somewhere here. Foster Moreau has caught a touchdown in 2 of the last 3 games. Again, they have no wide receivers to throw to, and Moreau has been involved for what it's worth. So if you're desperate, especially in a non-PPR league, you could throw Moreau in your lineup. If you're looking for touchdown upside at tight end, which why wouldn't you be? We have to acknowledge Noah Gray. If Kelsey's going to sit, Gray could be the guy who sees a lot of action. We know he can score even when Kelsey's on the field. Just don't know about Carson Wentz being a quarterback. This is why I can't put Noah Gray any higher, but definitely a streaming option this week. Then my favorite, really under the radar, let's just say off the radar play. Again, I mentioned with the Texans not having much to play for, they might protect Dalton Schultz. We might see Cade Stover, who has appeared from time to time as an option in the passing game. Cade Stover is a guy they drafted fairly high this year. He's somebody who has the chops to be a good receiver. And so, again, if you're looking for just a complete lotto ticket play here, someone who could do something, Cade Stover, the rookie for the Houston Texans, might be it. Good luck to everybody still playing for Week 18. We want to make sure we get it right and take home the championship. That's why you need all the advice at all the positions for start sit. It's all here in the Week 18 playlist.